You are listening to the B2B Marketing Mindset. We want to help demystify marketing to reduce risk, drive more and better opportunities, and grow your business.
I wish the guests could hear the music. We had so much fun with the music on this program. So I'm Pete Monfre, episode 122 of the B2B Marketing Mindset. We're broadcasting live from an undisclosed location in Austin, Texas, on LinkedIn, YouTube, a couple other places. Interview sales and marketing industry leaders, rogue disruptors, and people smarter than me to, thanks for, I gotta bring that music down. I like to interview people smarter than me because this program is all about helping you make better marketing decisions. And today I'm talking to Eli Rubel. And Eli's the founder behind No Boring Design, Profit Labs, and MatterMade. And he's a serial entrepreneur and investor that turns struggles into profit while building in public, which I think is an amazing idea. I see a few people doing it, but few as well as Eli. And he really shares his journey in a very honest way. As it happens on LinkedIn. So today he's going to share everything. But first, really quick, if you're seeing this video live, do us a favor, hit like, comment, or share. It tells LinkedIn to share the video farther and wider, doesn't it, Eli?
It sure does.
And it also helps me feel good about myself because I just want to be liked, honestly. So, hey, let's change the camera here. Hey, welcome to the program. I'm excited to talk to you, as I mentioned, and I follow you, and I think you have a lot to bring to the table. So you want to take like a couple minutes, introduce yourself, and share with folks what it means to build in public. I wonder if everybody knows what that means.
Yeah, sure thing, Pete. Thanks for having me on the show. Excited to chat with you. So Eli Rubel, you gave a great intro. I can't beat that intro, so I'm gonna leave that where it is. For me, building in public, it's a way to kind of process my own thoughts and thinking, and help refine my own thoughts and thinking, and then also a way to just kind of share the journey. I think you've probably seen this as well. Like over the years, it's become increasingly easy to access, as entrepreneurs, increasingly easy to access information about how to build things and how to start things. And I want to be part of contributing back to that kind of volume of knowledge and access that I wish I had when I was first starting out.
There's an awful lot of starting things going on right now, and especially marketing related, we call them marketing services businesses. It's a wide spectrum of different kinds of companies, but starting seems to be more common than succeeding.
I mean, the barrier to starting has never been lower, right? Which is great. It's leveling the playing field in many ways. Someone from anywhere in the world with an internet connection, can take a shot at starting a software company, starting a services business, start whatever. So, that it wasn't always the case, as you well know. So, yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think about that sometimes, and I think, well, the bar was X-Acto knives, pretty cheap, a poster board, and some acetate. Now, you did have to drive to a typesetter. Do I sound like I'm speaking like a foreign language? But that's what, but then it did get considerably more expensive. We thought, hey, computers are really going to make this more efficient, right? And then I'm not sure that's the case. But we had I think we bought 20 some odd Macintoshes in the Mac 2 CI days, and they were astronomically priced. But what that really did was, we didn't see it, I think, at the time. We're like, this is genius. I don't have to drive over to, I can't remember the name of it, the typesetter. But what it did is it did lower the bar, I think. And now it's gotten so much lower. Think about Canva and its impact on the design industry. So it is very low. But you have, some of the figures that you post are really impressive. And I know this because I've been there and had to post numbers as well. And so, like you mentioned, I think in your LinkedIn profile, since 2020, you've done about 10 million in profit. And I thought that was really interesting because that's 2020 to me seems like it was already pretty volatile, and then it went crazy in 2020. So what do you what do you see that the average agency or founder doesn't see?
It's a good
That's a big
question.
question.
Yeah, yeah. I don't even I, like. I'm not sure where to start with that, but I mean, I can talk about the volatility for sure. I think with anything in business, it's all about timing, and there are waves and seasons to business, and so it's a question of what wave are you catching or not catching. In my case, there was a huge wave from, call it, the early 2010s, when the tech market was recovering from the crash of 2008, and was starting to get, Web 2 was becoming a big thing. The App Store was becoming a big thing for the first time. So there were quite a few drivers back then that just had everyone really excited to be building and contributing to the entrepreneurial community. That wave, in my mind, really grew and grew and grew until it peaked in 2021. I missed a lot of that wave. As when I first started my software company, it was 2010, but I didn't know what I was doing. I was just kind of stabbing around in the dark and figuring it out, which, when you're just getting started, that's what you do. So I wasn't really equipped at the time to properly catch the Web 2 wave, but I did certainly benefit because I caught the tail end of that first wave, which again I think peaked in 21 and then definitely crashed in 22. Because I started Mattermade, my first software or my first services business, in 2019.
Yeah, and you actually are, you're involved in a number of bit companies and businesses, and it looks like a little different industries and tech. You have, I think if I look at what the overall picture of what you've done and what you're doing, I think very few people that start these kinds of businesses, let's say the hot one right now, it's the AI automation agency. I don't know what it
Hmm.
is, but it's something. And they don't have really any background at all. So I think that it gives you maybe more of an ability to see. I think for me, there was a lot of like I was thinking about the beginning, and you mentioned you try stuff, and I'm like, yeah, come to think of it, I don't know if there's any other way to do it. Um, and you get a lot of stuff wrong, and we certainly did. I think the thing with us is we were a design shop in 1990, and we very quickly saw the writing on the wall, and we're lucky to be in a group of other agencies, a community of them, but physical, like in person. Like fly to a resort and spend a lot of money and sit down with peer agencies and share your financials and everything else. And so we learned how to become a strategy first company. And that's when we started seeing actual real, growth. And our strange story is we started at the Fortune 100 level. And that's also the other weird thing is most of the time I think people work up to that, but that's kind of where we started. But those
Wow.
clients followed us, followed my wife, I should say, from her agency job, like NML was one of them. And so it was a really crazy way to start. So imposter syndrome was something. Did you? And I know
Hmm.
that you've posted about that. Um, do people ever actually overcome that?
I don't think so, personally. I mean, I think we get better at handling it, is my take on that. I actually had a conversation with, well, I've had this conversation with a lot of folks, but most recently I had this conversation with the woman who took over my companies as general manager. And we were talking about decision making and having the confidence just to make the decision and move forward. And a lot of that has to do with imposter syndrome. And I was just like, look, the feeling that you're having right now, it's going to follow you pretty much everywhere always. And so it's about how you push through that feeling and how you handle yourself when you have that feeling that makes the difference. I mean, I've imposter syndrome will change over time. Like when I was first starting out, my imposter syndrome was, I don't know anything. Like, who am I to be doing this? And then, over the years, it changes to, shit, I've never signed a seven-figure contract before. Who am I to be signing this seven-figure contract with a client? Like, that's insane. Um, you know, and now it's like, I've never put a general manager in place so that I can step away from a business. Like, who am I to do that? And it just keeps changing and evolving. But I do think you develop a strength over time around just being a bit more durable when it pops up. And you're like, okay, I know this feeling. We're going to get through it. It's just kind of par for the course.
Well, yeah, and I think when things really start moving, it's almost like you don't have time to think about that.
It's
But I
true.
also think people really underestimate their own insight and abilities. Now, if you're 15 or 16 and you're starting an agency, then maybe it's real. Maybe you should have some that we call it self-awareness. And I've literally seen like in social media people saying, "Hey, I'm 14 and I want to start an agency." How much influence do you think that these marketing influencers are sending a message that I think it's usually a digital agency or some kind of specific thing, but it's your fast path to riches easily. How much impact do you think they have on the market? It seems very big to me, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a certain segment of the market. I think that, yeah, I'm trying to remember what the acronym is for it because they're really big on YouTube. These kind of get rich quick with digital marketing agency influencers who probably have not gotten rich quick themselves but are talking about it type of a thing. Uh, I think it creates a lot of froth amongst people who don't know better. And I don't mean that as like a, a diss to those folks. It's just like if you're really young or if you've never done business before and you hear someone talking about this, like a lot of the time it sounds super logical. You want to believe it. You want to believe there's a shortcut. I think we all want to, wish for a shortcut, but um, then you get into it and realize that there really aren't shortcuts. Like there's certainly luck. There's a ton of luck. I've had a lot of luck in my career. I think anyone that I know who's been successful, luck has come and kind of blessed them at different times. So there can be shortcuts in that way, but you can't plan for that. So you just kind of have to
Well,
be in the game.
how lucky were we to fumble into these, major accounts and of
Exactly.
course, we made all the mistakes you make then too. You underprice yourself, you undervalue yourself, you let the clients push you around, but I had these other agencies to bounce things off of. So I think that made such a huge difference. And then along the way, a lot of mentors and coaches and consultants have really helped. And that's kind of scary too. Like you're spending money, you know.
Yeah.
And now I kind of do that work a little bit myself, but it's not coaching. I don't know what to call it. It is consulting, but it's packaged just for someone who's my age to work with you. And does that make any sense? Like I work with
Yeah.
people like 90 minutes a week, but we're actually doing stuff. I'm not like coaches are like, I don't know. What do you think you should do? You know, I don't know if that's that helpful, to be honest.
Yeah.
But anyway, real quick, if you're listening to this podcast in your ear hole on your favorite podcasting platform, you're only getting like half the picture. We appreciate you, though. But you could head over to b2bmarketingmindset.com to check out the video feed and a whole lot more. You got to see Eli's cool set, man. Mine needs to be cooler. Mine just has like a bunch of weird stuff. Um, but
You got that
anyway.
cool shirt though, so I need to catch up on that front.
Well, and I was going to talk to you about positioning because you are involved in a whole lot of things, right? I mean, it's hard to introduce you without mentioning at least three companies.
Yeah.
I could have mentioned more, but I'm kind of that same way where I have a lot of interests and I'm not afraid to like do stuff. But at the same time, it's like my positioning is kind of taking a pounding. So how do you
Yeah.
kind of? I had like some big shot consultant, a few of them, say, "You're unfocused." Do you get
Mhm.
that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's you just have to we have to be aware that any decisions we're making change our positioning and change how the market perceives our focus. I can give you some specific examples on that. So, when I first launched Mattermade, my paid media agency, we were laser focused on, we are the demand gen, demand efficiency agency for high growth B2B tech companies. We worked with companies like Dropbox and Loom. We created Loom's demand gen program from scratch. Hop and Com product board, just G2, like all of the names that ended up doing quite well over the last 5, 7 years, we've had some involvement in, most likely. Um, And so in those early days of Mattermade, my own brand positioning was the agency's brand positioning. I would talk about the stuff. I was laser focused on my LinkedIn, on my podcast, all these things. And then when I moved over to No Boring Design, suddenly my brand positioning shifted to talking about design and brand and the importance of that. And then that begins to whittle away at the focus that I used to have for Mattermade. And I think for me, it's a trade-off that I've been willing to make because I believe that like I don't want my brand, I don't ever really rephrase that. I don't want my agencies to be reliant on my brand forever. And I don't even, I don't even have that big of a brand, but I think the agencies need to have their own brand, their own voice, their own um, clarity and focus within the market without the founder pounding the pavement all the time. I think founder brand is incredibly powerful, but if you always have to have that founder there, you know, making loud noises through their megaphone, then the agency it's almost like when the founder is still selling within an agency, which is I think probably the largest hurdle that most agencies will never break past. If you think about the size of the market of folks doing agencies, a lot of people will build really great businesses and they're still the seller and they'll never go past that. And that's totally fine. But I think that that's kind of a pretty big agency milestone is to get out of founder led sales and have a seller do the closing for you, at which point now you can actually scale that agency. And I see founder brand is almost the same thing where it's really great if you can build an amazing business off of it. But if the business is completely reliant on that and then you stop promoting it, how durable is that business? Um, so yeah, that's kind of my thinking on that.
You know, I'm guilty. I mean, we had so much trouble trying to find people. Now let me give you the disclaimer on this. When we built my wife and I started, actually, it's the same company that I operate now, but it was started in 1990 in Milwaukee. Um, and it was before I actually had any sort of formal training in sales methodologies. And I'll always plug it. David Sandler Sales. Go look it up, people. Um, but I got 20 years of that now. But I actually built the bigger company where we had the actual offices and people in downtown on Water Street, which I love. I love saying that. But couldn't find salespeople to, I mean, it was like it was a trap I knew I was getting into, but I couldn't hire my way out of it somehow. I kept spending an awful lot of money. That's probably a whole topic for another episode, but it was so difficult. And now that I know this methodology, I can kind of see why. And I think a lot of marketing oriented businesses only see marketing, if that makes any sense. Like when they think of, wow, we need to get some more business in here, they start writing posts and they start building stuff and they make stuff. And what they really should be doing, I don't have my cell phone handy, but pick up the call, start doing sales outreach. And I have this theory, and even after all these years, I think all of mine are just theories still. I think you can do sales only and almost no marketing and be successful. It's just going to be real expensive. Or you can do marketing and sales, and and I think that's the ultimate combination. But and be successful. But if you only do marketing your way to 7-figure profit or even gross, I don't think it works. I don't think it works that way. I think you have to do outbound sales in the marketing services business.
Totally. Well, and you're talking about what's it been like since 2020 sort of question, and I think about what's happening in the market with technology and AI. Words are going to they're already becoming really cheap, meaning it's never been easier to sound like an expert on a topic, even if you're not. So it's like if we think that, let's take Dave Gerhardt from Exit 5, right? He wrote the book Founder Brand, was kind of the genesis story for the modern focus on founder brand. And now there's tons of agencies out there that'll help you develop your founder brand, and they're creating content about founder brand. And It's like no, very few people actually have an original voice on a topic anymore, and there's so much published content on all these topics that AI can now help you basically sound like an expert, even if you're not on a given topic. So what does that mean as a consumer? That means that you're going to go to a flooded LinkedIn that just has a bunch of noise and a bunch of topics that you've already heard a thousand different, like said a thousand different ways. And so then what does that create? I think that creates an environment where human to human relationship, whether it's through a phone call or in person, community building, whatever it is, like that's how selling is going to work as we push further into this era of AI kind of muddying the waters because people are going to crave authenticity and you won't be I don't think you're going to be able to get authenticity anymore through platforms like LinkedIn through the form of text certainly because again it's all just kind of fucked at this point. Um, and
No, it
video might
is.
even
That's a good
follow,
word.
right?
This is not a family show at all. That's a great word for it.
Yeah.
No, I
Yeah.
think
So
I
I,
think
I agree.
well, and it's kind of weird because LinkedIn is a community in a way, but it's kind of a strange community in that you don't necessarily know hardly any of those people. I mean, the amount of
Yeah.
people that follow me and that I'm connections with combined, I mean, I don't, I know a very slim percentage of them. Um, but I think community is going to be the way that businesses find um, help. Whether they find agencies or consulting or products or whatever, they're going to turn to whatever community they're part of. And so these communities like Dave, I'm glad you brought up Dave because I was going to bring him up too in this episode. Um, when I first talked to him, I had no idea really how successful he was and who he was. I didn't know about the book or anything like that. Now I know him, and it's very embarrassing. But next time I see him, I'll bring it up. But where was I going with that? I think that I think you're going to see this backlash against it, and you can't tell who's for real. But if you turn to your community, it's a lot easier, I think, to vet. And I think there's a lot of clients who they don't know enough to be able to vet. It's one of the reasons this podcast exists because we want you to have enough knowledge to know what you're buying, right? But
Yeah.
AI is certainly a complicator. There's all different factors right now creating this volatility, and so like one thing I saw, I think it was Gartner said the median marketing budgets in B2B are around 6.4%, which is pretty close to what they were in 2020, the height of
Hmm.
COVID. And then in 2023, it was 9.6. Um, I think most of 2024 it was somewhere around 9.6, which to me sounds very low, but I know it's median. Um, so AI, influencers we've talked about, globalization, applications like Canva. There's this idea that people have that there's just nothing to do the work. I mean, it just does take nothing. Just make Eli. I need a business plan, and I need that in 4 minutes. If you could get that on my desk, I would appreciate that. Um, how long do you think? I think all of these issues are contributing to volatility, but it's got to shake out at some point. What do you think the timeline is?
Oh,
I have no
that's
idea.
I think it's a loaded question because then we get into like, okay, if we're talking timelines,
It is.
then it depends on how if you're an optimist with around the AI stuff or a pessimist.
Hmm.
I'm a little bit of both. On a long-term horizon, and by long-term, let's call it in this case 5 to 10 years horizon, I'm a pessimist. On in a short term, like between now and 5 years, I'm an optimist. And I can explain why. So long-term horizon, a lot of people are not going to like my answer, by the way. Even a lot of my friends don't like this answer.
Love it.
Long-term horizon, I can call it 5 to 10 years. I think all of my agencies will be out of business. I think almost all agencies will be out of business. If you have a creative firm or a marketing firm, I think they'll like I think at least in the state that we know them today, they will all not exist, and they'll have to have evolved into something completely different that is unrecognizable from what we're doing today, simply because we won't there won't be a need anymore. So that's the pessimistic view. The optimist leading up to that time, though, in me is like, well, people for a while are really going to want this human touch. They're still going to want someone to look them in the eyes and say, I made you this amazing website, or, I'm going to own this marketing metric for you and make sure that it moves from A to B. Underneath that, though, there can be AI that the agencies are taking advantage of. So what does that mean? In my mind, that means increased margins. That means, between now and 5 to 10 years from now, when I have this pessimistic view, there's going to be this really optimal time period where agencies will not require as much workforce, as much human labor as they have traditionally to achieve similar results, but where the clients are still uneasy enough about AI that they still are hiring agencies to do the work as opposed to just using these tools themselves, because the tools won't be ready to do all of the work just on their own for a while.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my optimist pessimist. And then, essentially my lens on that is I hope I'm retired in 10 years.
I agree with that, actually. That's kind of the timeline I was thinking. I think, if you've read Crossing the Chasm or, any of Jeffrey Moore's stuff, I mean, it's like it's falling right into that same pattern. And, I think it's a really important tool, but I think it's just going to be so disruptive. So that is quite a take. Everybody will be out of business. I think that's true. I mean, I'm seeing it now. I mean, I talk to agency owners, and I say agency is a very loose term, all kinds. I mean, I've been including like software companies in my definition of agency. Um, but really, and it's not even geographically focused. I mean, it's really everybody's down, right? If you're down out there and you're like thinking to yourself, it must be me. The problem must be me. It's not you. The market is really nuts right now, and it's just and it is a difficult business, right? It's sold as something so simple. But it really is. If there's probably easier businesses to go into, Eli. Why aren't we selling appliances or something?
Man,
Everybody knows what a dishwasher is.
I think once you've been playing the entrepreneurial game long enough, that exact question, not appliances, but like the temptation of, man, why am I not doing this other thing that surely is easier than what I'm doing? And I don't know. I think all business
It's
is
all
hard.
difficult. One thing that I really was struck me too was so back in the 90s, our plan for net profit was like 35%. Like that would
Mhm.
be to us where it's like, oh man, this with 23 employees, right? Um, all in an office together in person. Um,
Yeah.
but and sometimes we'd hit, maybe closer to 40 on some projects. Of course, it would be much greater than that, but that was on a per project basis. But at the end of the year, but I think you're targeting, if I got this right when I saw it, 45 to 50%. Is that what you target for
Yeah,
profit for net?
my reference range is 45 to 55%, and
40 to
I
55.
believe yeah, I think if you're over 55%, that you're under investing in your team and it's going to come and bite you in the butt pretty soon. And if you're below 45%, you're leaving profit on the table. It's interesting that you said, back that it was 35% to 40%, because I think that would be exceptional if I had to have an office and had employees come into that office and globalization hadn't been a thing yet. So everyone was in person, W-2 local labor. Man, I think 35% to 40% was probably the same as 50 to 55% now. Because now we can take advantage of globalization. So reduce labor costs. We don't have to have an office. So there's reduced GA overhead. Um, yeah, yeah,
Interesting.
it's
That's funny because the first thing I thought of was the first thing I thought of was what other people, the first thing that would come to their mind is, oh, if your net profit is that much, you're overcharging. But it's like you could tell when somebody's been in the business for a long time because immediately you said, no, it means you're not investing enough in your company. So I see this with clients all the time. We go through the cost of acquisition type of exercise and looking at lifetime value, cost of acquisition, all those numbers and working that out. It's funny that sometimes they're spending almost nothing on customer acquisition, and they're happy as fat pigs sometimes, and they're like, well, look, I'm getting like a 40x return on my money. Why would I spend more? Really? Did you just ask that?
yeah.
Because In fact, in my spreadsheet model, it turns bright red when the number's that high, because that tells me there's a problem somewhere. And usually they're underinvesting in things like sales and marketing, and process is another one I notice a lot of. And so, yeah, I think so. And I with the caveat to my numbers is also that everybody's experience is unique to them, right? I mean, I've got this weird experience where, as a guy in my 30s, I'm walking into Rockwell and I'm like, yeah, it's going to be like 180 grand, and the guy's like, you're boring me with these numbers. Get out, as he's writing a check, get out of my office and do that thing. It was just like a different world, but that's the only one I knew, right? And so when we would do a full page ad for one of these companies, that was a $40,000 project. And so we're talking
Yeah.
a different economy of scale. And but as over the years, we've sort of worked our way down into the middle market and even down to smaller and upcoming companies. And of course, I think I'm older than you. I'm not sure. No, I'm pretty sure I am. And people assume, like, so I've been in business continually doing this for 35 years, but I have a lot of younger people look at me and assume that I'm not like hip on what's happening now with the technology, yo. How would I stay in business if that were the case? It's like I really am. Now I have to admit it's kind of wearing me out. Like I'm kind of tired of it. Like the AI argument, I'm just kind of sick of hearing about it. That's about as far as I can go at the moment. I'm just like, yeah, whatever. You know,
Well,
I'm sure your
that's
product has AI in it.
you did notice that I didn't say, and then 10 years from now, when all of our businesses are obsolete and we have to figure something else out, I'm going to ride that next wave and I'm going to be on top of that wave. I was like, no, I'm going to be out.
You're
I
gonna be
don't want
out.
to have to learn that.
That's
I don't
great,
want
and
to
I wish I was thinking that way. I mean, my name was in the company, and my wife's name, Monfre, was in the company name. We weren't thinking in terms of an autonomous business that could be sold, right? I mean, we did create SOPs and process. I got eMyth revisited, right? Boy, did that change my world, and it was right in time,
have.
because it was our growth was getting out of control, and it was a lot of this was luck. I wish I could take credit for it. It was luck, and it was the people I surrounded myself with. It was people I hired, um, and when I first figured out that I was scared to let people do their thing. Do you go through that? Like, and what I did, and I learned this in, I think it was probably Second Wind Network, which is still around. Second Wind, awesome agency network. Um, he said, look, just go away for a day, right? Then go away for two. I think it started with going out and smoking weed out in the parking lot with the creative director. I think that was like an hour. Go out for an hour and smoke weed, and then right,
Naturally.
and then it turned into like a day, and then a week, and then what happened? Nothing. Nothing bad happened. Like
Yeah.
people stepped up, and they were more than capable. They were ready to step up. Uh, you had that same experience?
Oh, 1,000%. I mean, for me, this is actually ties back to our conversation about imposter syndrome because when I was first starting out, I knew that I wasn't the smartest person on any given topic, and because I certainly didn't have the experience to be. And so my strategy was hire people that are smarter than me, give them the resources that and support that they need to thrive, and then get the hell out of their way and let them do their thing. And that I think that's been, if there's any theme across all of my random career happenings, it's probably that. Like that's become my strength is get smarter people out in front of me doing the work and help them just make sure they're enabled to do their thing. Um, so
Trust
yeah,
them.
I'm a big fan of that.
Oh, and
Yeah.
then, I read somewhere along the line, maybe it was 4 Hour Work Week, which I think is kind of a jokey book, but there's one thing that really resonated with me, that you can't break anything to the point where it can't be fixed. It's like once I realized,
Totally.
whatever goes on, I can fix it. And things, just these little incremental changes are kind of like what unshackled the company and allowed it to actually turn into a company. And, I think 9/11 was our black swan. Like, now
Mm.
I've been through two of them. And that really disrupted the market too. And it took a good, I'm trying to think back, it took a good, some people would say it never quite recovered from 9/11. Um, but actually what's happened is a lot of new technology, and it's just changed significantly what this
Mm.
means to be a marketing services company. You're
Sure.
close, like that Venn diagram between software company and marketing is turning into a big amorphous blob, even though completely different things. This is something I shoot my mouth off all the time. Strategy versus tactics. So chances are that agency that you're hiring, the things they're recommending are the things they sell, and they are all tactics, and you're not really doing marketing. You're just trying different tactics in a type of gambling way to try to see what's happening. And so if you're listening to this out there in podcast land, you learn one thing. You don't have to do it that way. It's not really a guessing game. It can be predicted, it can be planned, it can be executed according to that plan, and it's amazing. I mean, it's like it took me a long time to be able to do it this way, but it's like we can call it. We can call the numbers and the timing pretty much. We'll tell you when you'll cross over into break even if you follow our process plan recommendations, right? If you don't follow them, hey, I don't know, do whatever you want. But I think let's do some final thoughts here, because I think you and I probably could go on for a long time, and we really should do this again. And I hope that our relationship doesn't end at this podcast. I hope I can get to know you better. But
I love Austin, so I'll be down there bugging you.
Oh, really? You are in Austin?
No, I love Austin. I love.
Oh, you love Austin. Well, come down. One of my positioning problems. I'll bounce this off of you. Tell me what to do. So 47 years I've been a professional musician, and I perform here in Austin with some pretty well-known people, and it's confused the shit out of everybody. They're like, this guy's a guitar player. What is he doing? You think he's going to run our marketing or help us on the marketing end? And I'm like, no, you've got it flipped, man. And this is why I tried to keep it separate in Milwaukee, because all the time I was building this company, I was doing 4 or 5 shows a week.
Oh, wow.
And then I was touring too with blues originators like chess label people, which was great because my salary allowed me to do this other thing that didn't pay worth a shit. And it still doesn't. Like, that's why I'm like, no, not that. That's how, if you want to make tens of dollars a year, Eli, be a guitar player. In Austin, right? When you come here and you go to the airport, you'll see you'll just start tripping over guitar players. It's crazy. And they're way better than me, but I run the music thing the same way. I surround myself with players that are far beyond me. My drummer's from the Steve Miller Band. You might have heard of them.
What?
So much better than me. Like, these are session touring guys on a different level. And guess what that means? And I think this goes with the agency. If you hire all rock stars, boy, your job gets so much easier, doesn't it? That's my final thought. I usually let the guests go first, but I'm on a tear. What's your final thoughts, Eli?
No, I'm right there with you. Let's surround ourselves with people who are smarter and better at specific things than us, and let them rip.
And I don't think that I know in my case it's not false modesty. I mean, it is really a thing, right? I mean, I hired the director of marketing away from Schwarz Pharma. So I'm like 35 and he's like 60 or something. I don't know how. Sorry, Bernie. I don't think you were that old. It takes, you got to swallow hard and check your ego and go with that flow, man. I think that was really hard. But once, and then also hiring people from the military. Ooh, boy, if you want to get your process act together, hire a Marine, Anyway, thank you so much. What a great show. I appreciate it. Too bad we had the technical difficulty. I don't know what happened. Let's see. It probably cuts off on LinkedIn. So what we'll do is we'll edit this together and then we'll see everybody. And I think we're at the 2-week schedule now because I'm on sort of a sabbatical. So, but we'll be back to every single week, 11 o'clock Central. LinkedIn, YouTube, everywhere fine podcasts are consumed. And we talk to smart people, smarter than me. Thank you, sir. If you want to just hang on the Zoom chat.
Perfect. Thanks, Pete.
We'll wrap this up. People can listen to the outro music.
You've been listening to the B2B Marketing Mindset. Add to the conversation by commenting, sharing, and liking. And don't forget to subscribe and check out the links in the comments. Learn more at b2bmarketingmindset.com.
Sweet.